Today, we're diving into the story of an 18th century American businessman who, with almost zero education, somehow managed to stumble his way into an incredible fortune. This is the truly bizarre, almost unbelievable success story of Timothy Dexter. And this is the man himself, the self-styled Lord Timothy Dexter. His life was, honestly, a masterclass in failing upwards. Just a whole string of idiotic-sounding decisions that, against all logic, made him ridiculously rich. So, what's the deal here? Was this man just the luckiest fool who ever lived? Or was there some kind of cunning genius hiding behind that eccentric facade? Let's get into it. Okay, part 1, America's Luckiest Fool. To really get how strange his success was, you have to understand where he came from. And his beginnings were, they were humble. By all accounts, Dexter was not set up for success. I mean, he was born poor, he dropped out of school when he was 8 years old, and started out as a simple apprentice to a leather tanner. His first big break wasn't even in business. It was in marriage. He married a wealthy widow, which gave him the starting cash to get his bizarre ventures off the ground. And that brings us to how he became an accidental millionaire. See, the high society folks in his town, they really looked down on this uneducated guy. So much so that his rivals actively tried to bankrupt him by giving him the absolute worst business advice they could possibly think of. Their first plan was just brilliant in its stupidity. They convinced him to buy up thousands of metal bed warmers, those pans you'd fill with hot coals to heat up your bed in a freezing New England winter, and ship them to the tropical Caribbean. A guaranteed way to lose all your money, right? Nope. Wrong. When his ship got there, the captain discovered that the local molasses industry was desperate for long-handled ladles. And these bed warmers, they were the perfect tool for the job. He sold every single one for a massive profit. So, you'd think they'd learn their lesson. But no. His rivals, stunned but not defeated, tried again. This time, they told him to ship coal to Newcastle, an English town that was famous for its huge coal mines. It was basically the 18th century version of selling ice to Eskimos. And you can probably guess what happened next. Dexter's shipment arrived at the exact moment the Newcastle coal miners went on strike. The local supply was gone, and he sold his entire cargo at an enormous premium. The guy had done the impossible. Twice. And the list just goes on and on. It's ridiculous. He shipped wool mittens to the tropics, only for them to be immediately bought up by traders on their way to Siberia. He sent a bunch of stray cats to the Caribbean, which just so happened to be suffering from a massive rat infestation. He hoarded a huge supply of whalebone for no good reason, right as it became the go-to fashion material for women's corsets. Every single blunder turned into a home run. So the evidence for him being a lucky fool is pretty strong, but what if it wasn't just luck? This is where we get to the case for Dexter being a genius, just in disguise. Before all those ridiculous trades, Dexter made his first real fortune with a move that was anything but foolish. Right after the Revolutionary War, he bought up enormous amounts of Continental currency, the paper money that had become almost worthless. But then, the new government honored those notes, making Dexter a fortune overnight. Now that does not sound like a fool's move. And this is where some historians think his whole persona was an act. He seemed to understand how to corner the market on things nobody else wanted, and crucially, he understood the advantage of letting everyone think he was an idiot. For a guy from his background in that rigid society, being underestimated wasn't an insult, it was like a superpower. It was a strategic advantage. So whether he was a fool or a genius, one thing is for sure, he was an absolute eccentric. And as his money grew, so did his bizarre behavior, all of which led to a book that perfectly captures what a character he was. Just look at his house. He put minarets on it, a giant golden eagle, and a garden filled with 40 life-sized statues. Statues of guys like George Washington, Napoleon, and, of course, himself. His own statue had an inscription that read, "I am the first in the East, the first in the West, and the greatest philosopher in the Western world." He was so obsessed with his own legacy that he once faked his own death just to see who would show up to his funeral. Get this, about 3,000 people actually came to his mock wake. He wasn't happy, though. Apparently, he was furious that his wife didn't look sad enough, and he actually caned her for not crying. This wild eccentricity is perfectly preserved in his book, called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones.
And just listen to this opening line, which I'll read exactly as he wrote it. The spelling and grammar are, well, they're one of a kind.
The first edition of his book had zero punctuation at all. And when people complained, he added this to the second edition, an entire page of just commas, periods, and semicolons, telling his readers they could just pepper and salt it as they please. You can't make this stuff up. It's the kind of detail that sounds made up, but it was perfectly on brand for Lord Timothy. So after all that, where do we land? Let's try to reach a final verdict on the wild legend of Lord Timothy Dexter.
Okay, so on one side, you've got a mountain of evidence that he was a fool. He took the worst advice imaginable, he staged his own funeral, and he wrote a book that's almost completely unreadable. But on the other side, you have that genuinely brilliant currency trade, and the very real possibility that he cultivated this foolish reputation as the ultimate business strategy.
In the end, Timothy Dexter's life leaves us with this really fascinating question. His story is this bizarre cocktail of insane luck, sheer audacity, and just maybe a hidden genius. It really makes you wonder, in the game of success, what's actually more powerful? Being the smartest person in the room or having everyone in that room think you're the dumbest?